Israel's first king is Saul, and some people think that, what happened, that he kind of got a raw deal. Maybe you could just summarize Saul's story and talk about that a little bit. Israel's first king.
Yes, I've heard that, and it's a bit of revisionist reading. Remember, we have to, if we want to say straight on this stuff, we have to follow the narrator's lead. And so the narrator's attitude really should be our attitude. And if we go beyond that and try to impose our own view upon it, we'll go off the deep end. So how does the narrator view Saul? That is the key. And I think the narrator views Saul extremely negatively as a person who never had faith and who was problematic from the very beginning. But this is a case where you better be careful what you ask for because God will let you have it sometimes. And so they ask for a king like the other nations, and God gives them exactly that, a king like the other nations who is oppressive tyrant and ends up enslaving the people and becoming the kind of king 1 Samuel chapter 8 talked about, where when Samuel gave that description of a tyrannical king. And God disciplines his people by giving them the foolish things that they ask for, so that their own foolish requests end up whipping them. And that's the case with Saul. So did Saul get a raw deal? And as you said, at one point, was he bullied as a child and so grew up with this huge problem? I do not think so. In the Bible, when a narrator introduces a character, it's very important to look at how a character is first introduced to us. There's a lot to be learned that way. What are their first words? What is their first introduction to us? Like we need to ask, for example, what is Adam's first introduction to us? What are his first words, his spoken words recorded in the Bible? Interesting insights will come through. So Saul's first introduction to us is given in 1 Samuel chapter 9. And this is what we read about him. There was a Benjamite, a man of standing, whose name was Kish, son of Abiel, son of Zeror, the son of Bechorat, the son of Aphia of Benjamin. So this is in order to tell you that this is a great lineage. So Saul is coming from a very powerful family, a Benjamite family. Kish had a son named Saul, very handsome, as handsome as could be found anywhere in Israel, and he was a head taller than anyone else. So he has everything right so far. He comes from the right family, a great and powerful family, because when you get so many names named in your genealogy, it's an indication that you're a powerful family. And he has all the physical characteristics, very charismatic, good-looking, powerfully built, and all of that. Now the donkeys belonging to Saul's father Kish were lost, and Kish said to his son Saul, "Take one of the servants with you and go look for the donkeys." So this is Saul's first introduction. We meet him, and the first impression is very good. We're getting a good impression so far. Now comes a problem that he must solve. And that problem is the father's donkeys have wandered off. And so he sends his son on a mission to find donkeys. And that's going to be very important because the father is sending the son on a mission. When you become king, the Lord is going to send you on missions. Right? That's what being a king is about. God is going to send you on missions to do his work. So we, the readers, know that we better pay attention here because something is going to be revealed. Okay, so off Saul goes. So he passed through the hill country of Ephraim and through the area around Shalisha, but they did not find them. They went into the district of Shalaim, but the donkeys were not there either. Then he passed to the territory of Benjamin, but they did not find them. When they reached the district of Zuph, Saul said to his servant who was with him, and now we get the first words of this future king. And astoundingly, it is, "Let us go back. Let us go back, or my father will stop thinking about the donkeys and start worrying about us." Gives up the mission, accepts failure. And then look what happens, surprisingly. But the servant replied, "Look, in this town there is a man of God. He is highly respected and everything he says comes true. Let's go there now. Perhaps he will tell us what way to take." And of course, we know who that person is. He is Samuel. And let's look at the second words of Saul. The second speech. Saul said to the servant, "If we go, what can we give the man? The food in our sacks is gone. We have no gift to take to the man of God. What do we have?" Once again gives up. Negative. The servant answered him, "Look," he said, "I have a quarter of a shekel of silver. I will give it to the man of God so that he can tell us what way to take." Like, who is the leader here? Like, who is leading whom? Here's the future king of Israel. He's giving up twice over already, accepting the failure. And it is a servant that is encouraging him to keep going. Incredible. Now, here's the other thing. And this is where foreshadowing is important. Foreshadowing is very important. In chapter 3, verse 19, this statement was made by the narrator. "The Lord was with Samuel as he grew up, and let none of Samuel's words fall to the ground, and all Israel from Dan to Beersheba recognized that Samuel was attested as a prophet to the Lord." All Israel from Dan to Beersheba know that Samuel is a great prophet. Now, Dan to Beersheba, that is that merism, right? North to south, meaning everybody literally knew about Samuel being this great man of God. That's foreshadowing, because how is it that Saul does not know about Samuel? And it is the servant who has to suggest a possible solution to this problem. Why is it? Everybody else knew, all of Israel knows, but Saul seems to be unaware of Samuel. These are the techniques that the narrator uses, the author uses to lead the reader along the way. See, in narrative, this is one of the big features about narrative. Narrative is not like prophecy. The prophets will hit you on the head with the problem. Okay, you brood of vipers, you this, that, you're idolaters, and you this and that. In narrative, you don't do that. You tell a story that brings it out. And if you pay careful attention to the story, you'll be told this, you'll get to the same point as the prophet saying, "Thus saith the Lord, this is the problem." But you have to read carefully the clues that the narrator puts into it. And here is a very important clue that he has given us right at the beginning with Saul. He is not interested in spiritual things. Otherwise, he would have known Samuel. Okay? And secondly, he's a failure on this mission. He cannot come up with any solutions. He gives up. And there is still another option that he could have tried, that the servant gives. We know, well, we can't find him ourselves. Let's go to somebody who might be able to tell us the way and find us. But he can't come up with that. So very problematic character. Now, further along, he is led by, we'll cut through the story here a bit, he is led to Samuel eventually. And Samuel anoints him as king in front of all the elders. And he calls the elders together, and he puts this great, amazing feast, and he gives Saul the hind quarter of the cow, the beef, which is like a huge thing, a king's portion. They kill the fatted calf, and Saul gets the choice portion. And he eats it there, and then Samuel tells him, "You're going to be king." You know what's interesting is Saul's whole life, we talk about Abraham's life being bracketed by those two commands. Saul's whole life is bracketed on two meals. This meal that started his life, which is a great meal with all the elders, and he becomes king. His last meal in chapter 30 is with a witch who also kills a calf and feeds him the calf on the eve of his death, where he's told that he's going to die. Those two meals of that cow bracket his. Once with the Samuel and the elders, the final in the presence of a witch. Very sad. That's his whole life. So now Samuel says to him, "You are going to go from here, and you are, after I've anointed you, and 3 signs are going to occur, and then you'll know that you're king." And what are these 3 signs? The 3 signs are, you'll go and you're going to meet, 2 women carrying something at Rachel's tomb. And then you're going to meet a bunch of men, I think 3 men or something like that. And then you're going to meet you're going to get to Geba, is it? And you're going to meet a whole group of prophets, and you're going to prophesy with them. And then you're going to go into the city called Geba, where there is a garrison of the Philistines. And then the Spirit of God is going to come upon you because of these prophets. Then do whatever your hand finds to do. Okay, so Saul gets all that. He goes, and all the signs occur. But here's where you have to listen carefully. And one of Saul's problems that is shown throughout this initial introduction is he cannot listen. He does not have a ear to listen carefully to what is said. So all three signs happen. He goes to Geba, where the garrison of the Philistines were, and the Spirit of God comes upon him. And next thing you read, he's back home. And his uncle says, what happened? Now something was missing in that. And that is Samuel's little word. When you get to Geba, there is a Philistine fortress, a garrison. And the Spirit of God is going to come upon you. Then do what your hand finds to do. So what was the big clue? What was Saul's hand supposed to find to do? He's been anointed king. The Spirit of God has come upon him. It's to make war on that Philistine garrison. That's what his hands are supposed to do. And then Samuel says to him, that will draw the battle. The Philistines will gather their army, and that's first blood. You'll draw first blood. The Philistines will gather their army. Wait there for 7 days. I will come and offer the sacrifices, and then you're going to lead against the national enemy of Israel, which is the Philistines. You see, in that time, the way you became king was through a 3-stage process. And in a sense, we follow the same process today. Chosen by God, then you had to do something powerful to demonstrate your capability for the job. So we can say the first one, designation, divine designation. Second step, demonstration, where you do something powerful to demonstrate it. And then third one is public acknowledgement and coronation. So for example, when somebody goes for a job today, they are picked for an interview, but then they must demonstrate themselves in the job, and then they are given the job. Saul's designation was at Samuel's and that feast that they had. But he failed at the point of demonstration. He didn't engage the Philistine garrison that was at Geba when the Spirit of God came upon him. And so because the designation was not, because the demonstration was not carried out, the public coronation got left off. And so we have to wait a lot longer for Saul they have to go through the whole process again. And this time through ballots. And they find him hiding. And then they anoint him king again. And you can see Samuel picks him and he actually says to him, look at your king. And it's as if Samuel is saying, come on people, come on. Because the people are not too excited because this is our king that was hiding in the baggage. But Samuel tries to whip them up to give him some sort of encouragement. And then they go, okay, long hail the king, long live the king. And they sort of half-heartedly accept him. And then finally in chapter 10, he demonstrates himself against the Jabesh Gileadites that attack a tribe of Israel. And the Jabesh Gileadites appeal to Saul, and Saul raises up an army and goes and wipes out I think it's the Amalekites or something like that were bothering the Jabesh Gileadites. But here's the problem with that. Is it the Ammonites? I think it's the Ammonites that are oppressing the Jabesh Gileadites, the tribe of Israel, the city of Israel. He demonstrates himself against a petty enemy, not the national enemy. The Philistines are the national enemy. That's what the king is for. And he goes and takes on he's like a judge, not a king. This is what the judges are supposed to do. In fact, I think one of the points the narrative is making is Saul is never really the king. He's really more like a judge. And then the people come and they anoint him, and there's a public coronation, and Saul is made king. And that's how he comes to the throne. So that's Saul, very tragic figure. But his problems were there right from the very beginning. Not spiritual, not interested in spiritual things, and difficulty in hearing and listening. And those two things will plague him his whole life.